Hello my friends, and welcome back to another video. Today is my September wrap-up. I know I'm a little bit late, and by a little bit I mean a lot. I'm always late with these wrap-ups now, and it's because I push them off till the last minute. I know that's bad, but I do it. September was a really bad reading month for me. Not in terms of quantity. I did read 14 books, which is still a lot of books, but in terms of quality, I had a lot of books I just did not like in September. It was really bad. I was very slumpy. I was very unmotivated to read. If you know anything about my new TBR game, I did not finish my TBR, so in November I will be getting the repercussions of that. It would have been October, but I filmed my October TBR game before I knew I wasn't going to finish my September TBR, so November will be the month that I get my punishments. So I'm gonna try to be really quick with this because I really don't like talking about books I didn't like. So if I seem to be not talking as much, it's probably because I just don't want to talk about these books because I just don't really like them. So I'm sorry, but that's the kind of wrap-up you are getting from me this time. Hopefully my October wrap-up will be better, but unfortunately September was not great, so let's get into some of the books I read. So first up is the only ebook I read. I like to do these first because I have to insert them while I'm editing, and sometimes when I do not have the book physically in front of me, I forget about it, so it's just easier to get ebooks out of the way first. So the first book we are going to talk about is Anna Dressed in Blood by Kendara Blake. I read this for Amy McCaw's book club, the YA book club. I was part of the live discussion for this book, and it was a lot of fun. This is a YA horror, and it's about the main character, Cass, who is basically a ghost hunter of sorts. He finds ghosts that are lingering in the human world and basically kills them to send them somewhere else so they aren't lingering and causing mayhem or causing trouble. And he moves around a lot, him and his mom. They move around to different towns to look into different urban legends and lore that are surrounding towns. But they end up moving to this new town, and the urban legend that they are following is this ghost named Anna Dressed in Blood, and Cass is basically trying to release her and get rid of her. But he finds that Anna isn't a typical ghost. There are some other things happening. So I wasn't quite sure if I liked this book at first because Cass was a really interesting character. I didn't really love him. He was, I don't know, I wasn't super interested in him. I didn't connect to him. I wasn't really there for him, but a lot of the side characters I really loved. This also has romance in it. The romance for me didn't quite work as well. It was okay. It was just a little weird. It felt a little unnecessary. I didn't really need it to be there, but there are two side characters that have a romance, and I was very interested in their romance. I kind of wanted it to focus more on them, which I thought was kind of funny that I was more interested in the side romance than I was the main romance. But overall, I did think this book was a lot of fun. It was really different from other YA horror books I've read, a lot different from other ghost hunting type of books that I've read, which I thought was a cool spin on that type of trope. And I liked the ending. The ending made sense. It was a little bittersweet. It was a little hopeful. It was a little sweet. I don't know. I really liked it. Overall, I am going to give this one a 4-star. And I'm just so happy that Amy asked me again to participate in her book club. I always have the best time, so I will have that linked down in the description box if you want to see what we talked about. Next up, we have The Last One by Will Dean. This is an ARC I received from Atria. I was really excited about this book. It was a very anticipated thriller for me, and I I just thought it sounded so good. This book is about the main character Kaz, which is very interesting that I'm talking about this one after Anna Dressed in Blood, and they have very similar names. But this is about Kaz and her boyfriend Pete, who go on this cruise ship and they're having fun. It's like a great time, you know, they're enjoying themselves. And when Kaz wakes up the next morning, her boyfriend is gone. She cannot find Pete anywhere, and when she starts exploring the ship, she realizes that there is no one else there. So, the plot sounds incredible, and when I first started, I was hooked. The chapters are very short. It's a very quick, even though it's kind of a chunkier thriller in my opinion. I was just really hooked from the beginning, and I was so convinced that this book was going to be something just wild and crazy and out of this world, but when you find out what's happening, I was just so disappointed. I felt like it was so lackluster. I felt like it was just, honestly, such a lame twist. I wanted it to be something crazier. I wanted it to be something wilder. And I really had hope that it was going to be that, you know, level of crazy. But what actually is going on just felt so... I don't know. I was just so disappointed. I was so annoyed. I kept reading because I was like, there is no way this is it. There has to be more. There has to be more. And then I just kept reading and I was like, nope, this is it. Well, I'm this far, so I'll keep reading and finish it. And then the ending. The ending irritated me because you go through all of this crap with this book, okay? You get through it, and then the ending, it was just a slap in the face. It felt like you went through all this and here's your ending. And I was just so annoyed because I had such high hopes for this one. I really, really, really wanted it to be just spectacular. I have read another thriller from Will Dean and I loved it. So I think I expected more from this one, honestly. I truly did. I am giving this 3 stars because the chapters were fast. It was interesting, but I just think it fell really short for me personally. Another arc that I received was Rouge by Mona Awad. This was from Simon & Schuster, and I have a very weird relationship with Mona Awad. I didn't really like Bunny. I really liked All's Well. And then this one, I didn't know what to expect from it. I was like, it sounds like something I could like, but it's Mona Awad, so really I have no idea what I'm getting into. This book is about the main character, Belle, and her estranged mother, Noelle, has just recently passed away. And Belle is very interesting. She has this obsession with skincare. She has like a 25-step skincare routine, which just seems very excessive. And she ends up finding this very exclusive spa, and she finds out that her mother was kind of involved with this spa, except it doesn't really feel like a spa, it feels like a cult. So Belle kind of is looking for answers, but she's also really intrigued by this spa, and it's just like a whole thing. This is a very weird book, I'm not gonna lie. It's Mona Awad. I feel like that just comes with her name. You know it's going to be a very weird, bizarre kind of reading experience, but I have to say that I actually did enjoy this one. I don't know how other people are feeling about this one, but I actually really liked it. This one to me felt more along the lines of All's Well. It felt much easier to comprehend, unlike Bunny. I felt like I was grasping the messaging. I felt like I was understanding the underlying messages. I just felt like I got it, which I felt like with Bunny, I didn't get anything. So I really liked that aspect. I also really like that this book focuses on beauty and how women, you know, we strive to keep our beauty and to look beautiful and to keep ourselves looking younger, because being old is seen as ugly and not just a part of the aging process. And I really liked that conversation because as a woman, I feel that pressure a lot. I'm sure other people can definitely, you know, relate to that pressure of the need to feel beautiful and youthful constantly, even as you're getting older. And, you know, people start using anti-aging stuff, you know, because we don't want to look old, because old isn't seen as beautiful, which is a really sad thing. And I really like that this book tackles that topic because I think it is super important. I just really liked how this book handled everything. Don't get me wrong, it's still really weird. Still really weird. There's a lot to do with Tom Cruise in this as well, which, like, Tom Cruise, I was very flabbergasted by that. I was so confused by that. So confused. I still really enjoyed the book. I thought it was very interesting. I actually really liked the ending to this one as well. I felt like the ending made a lot of sense, and it was a lot more happier than I was expecting it to be. I thought it was going to be more of a sad ending, but I felt like it was a more happier, hopeful ending, which I liked. So I am giving this one 4 stars. Another arc that I read this month was What Kind of Mother by Clay McLeod Chapman. This was sent to me from Quirk Books. I was very, very excited to have this one and to read it. I really love Clay McLeod Chapman's writing. I will say I've had an interesting experience with his books. I really loved Whisper Down the Lane, but I wasn't a big fan of Ghost Eaters, so I didn't know how this one was going to work for me. But this is about the main character, Maddie, who was a teen mom, and she is now returning back to her hometown because she's having a little bit of trouble surviving, and her daughter is now 17 years old. And the way she's keeping herself afloat is by reading palms. She ends up running into, like, one of her old high school boyfriends, Henry, and Henry's son, Skylar, who was a baby, went missing 5 years ago. Maddie ends up reading Henry's palm, and she sees a lot of visions, and they're very ominous and weird. She decides to help Henry look for answers to what happened with Skylar. The first half of this book I loved. I was devouring it. It just had that mystery thriller vibe I was interested in. I really liked the missing persons aspect. I don't know, it just had me hooked. I really liked Maddie's job as a palm reader. I thought that was really cool. Unfortunately for me, what happened is the second half of this book takes a very odd direction. I think a lot of people are going to like it. For me, it was just a little too weird. It just wasn't something I enjoy particularly in horror. It's not a direction that I enjoy. So for me, I was just kind of like, all right, you lost me a little bit. I still kept reading it. It was an entertaining book. It was easy to read. It was easy to fly through. I felt like there was a lot of good parts to this book. The second half focuses a little bit more on, like, body horror, and I felt like Clay McLeod Chapman did a really good job with the body horror. It was very different than I have seen, and I felt like it was a very unique spin on body horror. So I feel like he did that very, very well. It's just the actual plot was bizarre to me. I just didn't really get along with it. But overall, the book's not bad. It's gonna have its audience. It's just not quite for me, so I am giving it 3.5 stars. Next, we have Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. I read this for my Patreon book club. This was a very, very interesting read. This is about the main characters, Nena and Nestor. They were childhood friends, and also, you know, they had like a romance going on. But 9 years ago, Nena was attacked, and Nestor believed that Nena was dead, so he actually ran. Now, in present day, it's 1840s, and this is during the Mexican-American War. And now in present day, Nena is still living on the ranch that her dad owns. Nestor is a vaquero, and this is when the United States is invading Mexico, and Nestor comes back home to help, and that's when he runs in to Nena, and they find out that Nena isn't dead. But of course there is a vampire twist. Not only do they have to worry about the Anglos, they have to worry about vampires. This was a very interesting read because I kind of expected it to be closer to the Hacienda, which I did enjoy by Isabel Cañas. I like it more now than when I initially read the book, but the Hacienda is a lot of romance. Like, the romance is really like the main plot point of the book, but I would say a good decent chunk of the book is also horror, and then a teeny tiny portion is the historical aspect. For this one, it's pretty much all romance with a good chunk of historical aspect and then a teeny tiny bit of horror. I wanted it to be more like the Hacienda, where the horror was more of a main focus, because the vampires in this book are really, really cool. I really liked what Isabel Cañas did. I thought it was very interesting. I thought that it was very different, and I just wanted more of that. I wanted more. And I'm just not a history person. I don't really care for historical fiction. It's not something I gravitate towards. I'm not a history person in general, so reading it in books doesn't make me like the books more. It kind of hinders my reading experience. But I will say that I really liked the romance of this story. I loved Nena as a main character. I thought she was so freaking cute. She was sassy, and I loved her so much. I loved Nena and Nestor. I thought they were great characters. I liked their romance. I was rooting for them to get together. So overall, I did like this one. I just think that the horror is extremely lacking in this book. It's not like the Hacienda, in my opinion, and I wish it had been, but I am still giving this 4 stars because I did enjoy it and I did like it. And I think Isabel Cañas is a great writer and a great storyteller. Next up, we have The Country Will Bring Us No Peace by Matthew Simard. This is a French translated book. This is a very, very, very short novella. This is about the main characters, Simon and Marie, and they cannot have a baby. So they end up going to this small little picturesque village, kind of to grieve and to try and move on. But the town is very weird. There's this like antenna in the town that's super bizarre. There's like no birds. There's people disappearing, and the town people are just not that nice when they show up. They're just not excited to have them there. This is definitely a novella about grief. It's obviously, you know, talking about Simon and Marie and their inability to have a child, and it was a very interesting way to tell the story, but I felt like it did a really good job of showing grief. I feel like sometimes grief horror works really well, and then sometimes it just doesn't for me. So this one is just a great example of how well it did work. My only like nitpicky problem with it is just there's not really any answers. Like, it's a very weird little book, right? I mean, the antenna thing is very bizarre, but you just don't really find out a lot about anything. You don't get answers, probably because it is so short. Again, I get it, but I would have liked some kind of answers, just like a little bit of explanation, like a little hint, a little direction to push me towards, I don't know, something. But it was enjoyable. It was very short and quick and easy, and I think it did its job, so I am giving it 4 stars. This next one hurts me, like truly deeply. It hurts me to talk about because I really wanted to love this one and I just didn't, and that is Along the River of Flesh by Christopher Triana. It's the sequel to Gone to See the Riverman. If you know me at all, I absolutely love Gone to See the Riverman. It's one of my favorite extreme horror books of all time. I think it is the best example of what I want in extreme horror. I think it just does everything perfectly, and I think it was shocking in the best ways. I don't know, Christopher Triana just really nailed that book. Of course, I was so excited to get a sequel, and I immediately picked it up. This, I can't really give a plot synopsis because it takes place right after Gone to See the Riverman, but you're following a police detective, a private investigator, and a young girl. They're all kind kind of doing the same thing, they're looking for the same thing, and they end up crossing paths. Oh, this hurts me so bad because I just didn't really like this one. I wanted to, but for me, I think everything that Gone to See the Riverman did perfectly, this one lacked. I think the 3 POVs were a big reason for me. I really just didn't like them. I really didn't care about any of the characters. I wasn't really intrigued or invested or really anything. I just didn't care about these characters. Whereas in Gone to See the Riverman, Lori is not a likable character, but she's fascinating, right? I mean, she's obsessed with this serial killer, Edmund Cox, who is a terrible, evil person who does horrible things to women, and she's in love with him. She's his pen pal. She'll do anything for him. And then the more you learn about her, the more fascinating she is because she has her own secrets. I think the problem is I couldn't feel that way about these characters because they didn't really have anything that Lori had going for her as a main character for me. The other thing is, I found this one much more predictable, which makes me so mad because one of the best things about Gone to See the Riverman is it was so shocking. I had no idea what was gonna happen. It just smacked me in the face. And this one, I was like, oh, all right, yeah, I see what you're doing. Okay, cool. I mean, that's not, you know, bad for some people, but for me, I didn't really like that. I like being surprised and shocked, so it just was a disappointment for me on that front. The ending made me laugh a little bit because there was kind of like a nod to the original Gone to See the Riverman, you know, and I was kind of like, I see what you did there, that's funny. I mean, not really like funny, but like, ha 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 ha, you know, like ironic funny. I don't know, I just feel like everything that I love about Gone to See the Riverman just wasn't in this one. It's still really brutal, it's still really gross, it's still, you know, messed up and disturbing. I don't know, it just didn't do it for me. I'm really sad about that. I'm really, really sad. I know a lot of people love this one, but for me, it didn't work. I wasn't that, I don't know, I just wasn't that invested in it. So I am contemplating between a 2.5 and a 3 star for this one. Yeah, this was pretty disappointing for me. Next up, I ended up reading volumes 5 and 6 of Spy Family. I am loving this series so much. I wanted to read these 2 volumes so Justin and I could watch the anime, the first season. This is pretty much where it cuts off. I kind of wanted to have read them before I started the anime, so I decided to read these. I'm still loving it. It's so cute. It's so fun. It's just such an easy read. All the characters are so lovable. It just cracks me up. I love Anya still. I don't know. Everything about this is so much fun and adorable. The series so far for me is getting like a 4.5 star. I do rate manga based on series, not based on volume, just to make it easier on myself. And this isn't complete. I'm not finished reading, you know, where it's at anyways, so it's still a tentative rating, but I am loving it. Then I read Killing Stalking Volume 3. I also am not going to go into too much about this one because this is in the middle of a series, obviously. I'm still enjoying this one as well. I am not sure where this is going. I'm just really not sure where this series is going. I can't tell how this is going to end in the slightest. This one, though, I had such a big gap from the last volume, volume 2, to this one, that when I started this one, I was like, whoa, 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 what is going on? And this one starts off very brutal and just really messed up, and it was kind of a shock because I was like, whoa, wasn't expecting it. I mean, I should have been because this series is very disturbing and very messed up, but I just had such a long break in between volumes that I kind of forgot what I had been reading. So this one definitely shocked me in the beginning. I was like, whoa. Definitely disliking our boy here, Sang-woo, more and more. I feel like that's probably not, you know, weird, but, you know, he does some really messed up things in this one. Not surprising. If you've read any of the volumes, you are pretty aware of what's going on in this. Still enjoying it. I am giving this one 4 stars. I think this series is going to be a 4-star as well, but I am unsure because I'm still reading it. So as of right now, it's getting a 4-star from me. Next up, we have a thriller that is very beloved. This is The Night Swim by Megan Golden. I picked this up without knowing what it was about because everyone talks about it and everyone loves this one. Unfortunately for me, this also didn't really work for me. This is about the main character, Rachel. She has a podcast where she discusses true crime, and for this season of her podcast, she is in a small town that is basically divided by this ongoing trial, which has to do with a case of rape. When she arrives in this small town, she starts receiving these mysterious letters begging for help, and she's very shocked by them because no one really knows what she looks like. She keeps herself pretty anonymous, so it kind of startles her that someone knows who she is, but she can't really let go of these letters, so she gets kind of tangled between two things going on. This is a very heavy thriller. It obviously deals with, SA and rape. It's a very, very triggering subject. It's a very tough subject to read about. It's not that I didn't like this book. I think the story itself is pretty good, and I think the way it was talked about was pretty good. I think my problem is this doesn't really feel like a thriller. I don't know really what I would classify it as, but to me the plot doesn't really work as a thriller plot. It felt just more like a little bit of a mystery. It was also very predictable because, again, not very thrilling. There weren't too many twists and turns. I thought it was pretty obvious from the beginning what was going on. So I don't know. I think it just didn't work for me because this is labeled a thriller and it just doesn't really read as a thriller. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. This was okay for me. I didn't really like the main character. She kind of got on my nerves a lot, which is unfortunate because I did pick up Dark Corners, which includes Rachel again. I believe that's like number 2 in like this kind of series that's going on with that main character. So I will be reading that eventually, so hopefully she's not as annoying in this one. I don't know, but yeah, this didn't really work for me. I'm gonna probably give it a 3-star. Next up, we have The Trap by Catherine Ryan Howard. I was very, very excited to read this one because if you know me, The Nothing Man is one of my favorite books of all time. I absolutely love that book. I think it's incredible. It just was like such a good read. And the last book I read by Catherine Ryan Howard, which was Runtime, I didn't really like. So I was excited for this one, but also very, very hesitant because I didn't know if I was going to get something along the lines of The Nothing Man or if I was going to get something along the lines of Runtime. So this is about Lucy, and Lucy's sister Nikki went missing a year ago. She went out with some friends to a bar and she just never came home. And she's one of like 3 women that have gone missing very recently. So Lucy basically starts to take matters into her own hands because she feels like no one's really going to find Nikki except for maybe her because she's actually doing something. This one definitely feels more like The Nothing Man. I was frustrated with this book. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think it's the multiple POVs. It threw me for a loop. I wasn't expecting it. I didn't hate it, but I wasn't like in love with it either. I really cared about Lucy and her sister Nikki more than anybody else. Oh, the ending to this made me really mad. It made me really, really mad. I did guess a little bit of this book. I felt like I kind of figured some stuff out. The ending shocked me, but it also made me really, really mad, but I still liked the book. I'm very hesitant to give it 4 stars because I don't know if I want to give it 4 stars. It's the ending. I'm telling you, I'm such an ending person. If something ends terribly, it just makes me so upset. And so this ending just was like so gut-punchingly frustrating that I was like, I just wanted to throw it. Like, I wanted to throw the book across the room, and I didn't, but I wanted to. So I don't know how I feel about it. It definitely feels more like The Nothing Man, but The Nothing Man was so much more satisfying to me, and this one lacked that satisfying ending. So I don't know. I still did like it though. I really do. I did like it. I'm mad about the ending, okay? I'm probably still gonna give it 4 stars though, alright? It was good. I'm just bitter. Next up we have A Crooked Tree by Una Mannion. I still don't know if I'm pronouncing this author's name correctly or not. This book was not what I was expecting, and a lot of people told me this was not a thriller, so don't expect a thriller, and it's 100% not. It's more like a drama with like a hint of mystery, and it's like a coming of age story. But basically this is about the main character Libby, and one night when Libby and her siblings and her mom are driving home, her younger sister Ellen, she's 12, she gets in trouble by her mom, and her mom kicks Ellen out of the car. She tells her to walk the rest of the way home in the dark, and that's it. And they end up driving away, leaving this 12-year-old girl to walk home. And basically there's like a whole chain of events that occur because of the fact that Ellen had to walk home alone. I thought this was gonna be very different. Like I said, I knew it wasn't a thriller, but I just wasn't expecting this kind of story. It was good, but weird. It's a lot about like family dynamics, growing up, sibling relationships, living in a small town, you know, growing older. I don't know. It was okay for me, but I think I'm just someone that needs more thrill. Again, I knew it wasn't a thriller, but I just needed a little bit more oomph. I needed something. And at times it felt like that was going to happen, but then it never did. There were things I really liked about this book, but I think it'll hit home for people that really relate to this family dynamic and relate to this story of growing up, if they had similar childhoods, if they had similar family structures. I just think that if you have a similar background to these characters, it'll hit differently. My family wasn't structured like this. I didn't grow up like this. I couldn't really connect to the characters. It didn't really hit me like I think it was supposed to. So for those reasons, it didn't really work. I still enjoyed it for the most part. Like, I wasn't like bored to tears. You know, I finished it, but I would probably give it a 3-star. The last book I have to talk about is probably one of my least favorites of the whole group, so I saved the worst for last, and that is Theme Music by T. Marie Vandelli. So a lot of people love this book. I've seen high praise for this story. I went in thinking it was gonna be great. I really wanted to love it. I hated it. So this is about the main character Dixie, and when she was 1 year old, her father butchered her whole family and then slit his throat. She was the sole survivor of this tragic event, and now 25 years later, she's kind of looking for a connection to her family, and she finds that the house where her family was living in at the time of said event is up for sale, so she decides to move in, which I don't think is like the weirdest thing a character could do. Honestly, I kind of get it, but Dixie is like the most irritating character I've ever met. Anyways, she moves into the home and she starts thinking that perhaps it wasn't her father who killed her whole family. My thing about Dixie is I don't think it's weird that she moved into her family home. I get it. You know, people grieve in different ways. People look for connections in different ways. I just think the things after that is where she lost me a little bit. Like, she uses the same furniture that her family had in the home and like rearranges it in like the exact same positions. And I'm like, ah. But there's also like a haunting aspect. She's being haunted by her family. There's of course the psychological aspect of, is she crazy? Is she imagining it? Which is one of my least favorite tropes of all time. I hate the crazy trope. It drives me insane. Either make it a haunting or don't. I'm sorry, but it drives me insane. I hate the crazy trope. It's so infuriating. I just can't stand it. It's such a predictable story. I'm sorry. It's so freaking predictable. It's a lot like the Amityville Horror, which isn't a bad thing. The Amityville Horror is great. It's a legendary story. I mean, you know, it's iconic. People know all about it. But I'm just so tired of haunted house stories either full on following The Haunting of Hill House or the Amityville Horror. If you're gonna do a haunted house story, please don't copy these. Like, make it your own. Try to do something different, please. And this one just felt like it was really trying to be the Amityville Horror, and it drove me insane because I've seen Amityville Horror. I want to see something different. This also was such an obvious plot. Dixie, why didn't she figure this out sooner? I don't understand. There were just giant red flags. I was sitting here going, Dixie, how are you not catching this? Or so-and-so, how are you not catching this? It was just infuriating to read, and I just hated her so badly, and I just wanted this to end so bad. I was praying it would end faster than I was reading it because I wanted it over so quickly. It was too long for the kind of story it was. Too long. It did not need to be this long. It just dragged and dragged and dragged, especially when the plot was so obvious. So obvious. It was so obvious. Like, there was no twists. There were no turns. Everything was right in front of my face the whole time. I was literally like, Dixie, how are you not seeing this? So this was just like such a frustrating read. I did not like this book. I will probably be giving it 2 stars, and I don't recommend it. I'm so sorry if you like this book. I'm so sorry, but it was literally so infuriating for me to read. I couldn't stand it. All right, my friends, that is it for my September wrap up. Like I said, a lot of duds, a lot of books I didn't like. Hopefully this wasn't like a downer of a video. I try to be more positive, but sometimes I just really don't like books, and I have to tell you my thoughts. I have to be honest. I'm so sorry if you loved any of these books that I said I didn't like. I'm so sorry. You can go ahead and leave me your thoughts in the comments down below. I would love to hear if you enjoyed any of the books that I hated, or if you agree with me. I would love to hear it either way. You know, books work for people differently, so whatever doesn't work for me might work perfectly for you, and what works for you might not work for me. If you enjoyed this video and you like seeing my wrap-ups and you want me to continue doing them in the future, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. That way I know and I can keep doing wrap-ups for you all. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I also have a Patreon linked down in the description box. We can become friends, talk about books, horrifying books, thrilling books, romance books, manga, all that good fun stuff. And with that being said, I hope you're having a great day, night, morning, afternoon, wherever you are, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!